This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you so much for tuning in to the program. It's Wednesday, September the 3rd. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams, he's produced the program. You will be speaking with David when you give us a call and get in the queue and on the air. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So for tennis fans this afternoon at 1 p.m. Island time, Felix Auger-Aliassime takes on the number 8 seed Alex de Minaur in the quarterfinals at the U.S. Open. Go get him, kid. A couple of quick notes on tennis. Why? Because I love tennis. On this date, 1989, American tennis superstar Chris Evert defeated 15-year-old Monica Seles 6-love, 6-2 in the fourth-round match. It was her 101st and final U.S. Open singles victory. Of course, Chris Evert Lloyd, at the time, number one many, many times. Monica Seles went on to be number one in the world. But talk about a run. Between 1971 and 1983, Chris Evert reached the semifinals or better in 52 of the 56 majors she played in, including 34 consecutive majors entered from 71 through 83 at the French Open. Amazing stuff. All right, let's keep going. Oh, shout out to some local athletes. Got this note a little bit too late for the opening yesterday, but Nathan Sears and John Ennis, they were at the Olympic triathlon race at the Somersault Canadian Triathlon this past weekend in Ottawa. Nathan Sears, overall rank, 10th. For males, 10th. Age group rank, first. So that's males between 30 and 34. John Ennis, overall 16. Gender rank 15. Age group rank third. That's males 25 to 29. Pretty great results. Okay, back to school. For everyone in the province except for the children or the students out in CBS. So there's plenty of confusion going around as to what led to such a drastic turn of events when there was a water main break serving the community of CBS. So the schools are closed, all the businesses are closed, other than gas stations and pharmacies. So, state of emergency, and it looks pretty optimistic if you hear from Darren Brent, who's the mayor of CBS, and speaking with Russell Bowers this morning. So I guess repairs are well underway, but they have to recharge the entire system. So apparently that's going to take some time, but they fingers crossed, hopefully things will be back to so-called normal today, hopefully. And in the world of back to school, I mean, what kind of place do we live in where there's got to be warnings coming from the Better Business Bureau and the RNC about posting pictures, which most of us did on social media, just the first day of school. You know, you capture those memories, you post it up. But apparently for folks who share a lot of information, age, grade, school, that type of stuff, apparently with artificial intelligence scraping the internet for all this type of information, it can apparently be a potential problem for you and your family. So I don't know, man. But the back-to-school pics are pretty popular. We wish you and your family, especially your school-age children, nothing but the best this year. All right. So we've talked about the Education Accord report, which is huge, and I'm still trying to make my way through it. But I'll keep leaning in on just how many people are missing school in a chronic fashion. That's 10% of the school days. Here are some numbers. This is interesting. Mark Lane sent this along from the North Pound Foundation. This was an initiative back in March of 2023 investing in the Smallwood Crescent Community Centre to deal with dropouts and absenteeism in just one single neighbourhood. Okay. At the time of the investment, there was 31 junior and high school age children in the catchment area, with 16 of them chronically absent or having dropped out entirely. They've done some research as to what this cost. It's estimated that school dropouts cost the province of Newfoundland and Labrador upwards of $20 million per year. Each individual student that drops out in secondary school costs the province approximately $1.5 million over their lifetime, for obvious reasons. Now, can it happen that some people can go on to be successful in one form or fashion if indeed they're chronically absent, if indeed they drop out of school? Sure. The likelihood of that erodes year over year, but that's amazing numbers. We can understand the reasons why it would be that would be the reality, but that approach taken, it's got to be mimicked elsewhere, and it's down in the Mayorstown area. So the dropouts and the chronic absenteeism leads to enormous problems in the schools, and then consequently for individuals through their lifetime. So if you want to take it on today and talk anything back to school, whether it be the preparedness of the school to receive the children today, all the additional supports that should be in place today, all the teachers that should be in position today and maybe will not be, it's chronically an issue year over year, but if you want to talk about it, we can do it. All right, let's get right into it. The Upper Churchill Memorandum of Understanding. So we had the opportunity to speak with the CEO and president of Newfoundland Labrador Hydro, Jennifer Williams, yesterday here on the program. But one thing we did not know prior to that conversation was what was going on with the status of the 3-person oversight panel. Not good. So Michael Wilson, he was selected by the citizens representative as the so-called independent panel, of course, to report and review the Upper Churchill negotiations or renegotiations. Here's some of the quotes from Michael Wilson, who has now resigned. Couple of initial thoughts here. So apparently the resignation came back in May the 12th. All right. So every single time that something like this happens, when we find out so much after the fact, it just leads to further consternation for the taxpaying public. You know, this is an important piece of information here. So the significance of the resignation, I'll leave it up to you. But here's some of the quotes coming from Mr. Wilson. He says, the independence of the panel became impaired, and I no longer believe the panel's reports would meet the public expectations and need for independent analysis supported by a full and frank commentary. He goes on to say, I'm convinced more than ever that we need to slow down, put the appropriate oversight in place as recommended by Justice LeBlanc through the Muskrat Falls Inquiry recommendations, and let's ensure we get this right. There's a lot to this, and basically it all boils back to price. He's referring to the report from July of this year. The July report does not provide any findings arising from a detailed review of the MOU. It does not provide any insight as to the reasonableness of the projected project, costs, risks, or if the project benefits are fairly stated. It does not identify open items to be negotiated or key decisions to be made during the ongoing negotiation process. Provides little insight as to the specific oversight mechanisms deployed by the panel to ensure public policy and commercial objectives are reached. He says in his analysis, while limited in scope, indicates there may be significant opportunities to improve the anticipated outcomes for the province, in particular with respect to pricing. We'll just read a couple of more things here. And again, you know, some of these comments are stark differences to what we've heard, for instance, yesterday from Jennifer Williams and others. Number one, what's the justification for selling 40% of the value of Gull Island, the most valuable undeveloped resource in the province, without an independent valuation? The transaction price and other commercial terms require an enormous amount of scrutiny. Number two, what's the justification or selling existing Churchill Falls power to Hydro-Quebec at a price at least 50% lower than the current replacement cost? How does this represent fair value? Of course, we asked that direct question to Ms. Williams yesterday. And I don't know if you heard her, and maybe it might present an opportunity to take some snippets out, not to take things out of context, but to replay some of the answers which are absolutely quite different from what Mr. Wilson is having to say here. And I'm not discounting it. And how do I prove that? I'm reading it. What's the justification for selling 100% of the power from all new developments to Hydro-Quebec for a price equal to the cost to generate without a price escalation clause tied to the increase in the value of the power, which Ms. Williams says is simply not true. So this is politically tricky piece of business. And it just gets trickier when first reported, I should give Alex Bill and the folks at All Newfoundland and Labrador who first reported in their online news website, is when we find out in September about something significant like this happened in May, then of course, further pause for concern for plenty. Now, there'll be people that are absolutely all in on this MOU, on the road to definitive agreements, but for those who are not, they'll say that this bolsters their opinion. And it's hard to argue with that. So let's get into the LeBlanc business. Ask Ms. Williams once again about the recommendations from LeBlanc that any activity, any project with a cost in excess of $50 million should go to independent review. Now, one question I would have for folks who are leaning in on independent review, I don't disagree with you. We need to get this right. When independent review is commissioned, it also has to come with terms of reference. So what would they be? And that's an honest question for me to all the folks out there speaking about the need, right from Tony Wakeham on down, members of the general public. Let's get into some of the recommendations from LeBlanc. Number one, the government of Newfoundland and Labrador should never undertake on its own or through one of its crown corporations or agencies the planning, approval, or construction of any large project, meaning a project with a budget of $50 million or more, without, one, engaging independent external experts to provide robust review, assessment, and analysis of the project. B, providing well-defined oversight after consideration of oversight processes instituted in other jurisdictions. That includes, of course, reference to the PUB. Then they go on to say, or this is from LeBlanc, the government of Newfoundland and Labrador should amend Section 5.4 of the Energy Corporation Act to authorize the Information and Privacy Commissioner to determine if Nalcor is required to disclose information it wishes to withhold on the grounds of commercial sensitivity. Last one, and this is a big one. Nalcor should not be entitled to withhold information from the Premier, the Minister of Natural Resources, the Minister of Finance, or the Clerk of the Executive Council on the grounds of legal privilege or commercial sensitivity. With the resignation, and with the fact that the province seemingly is loath to have some sort of independent review, and who would do that, I'll leave it up to you. But all it really does is plant further seeds of doubt. Now, some of that is based on historical context. When referencing the Upper Churchill, immediately people's backs get up based on the 1969 contract. When we talk about mega projects on the Churchill River, a.k.a. Muskrat Falls, it gives people pause for concern. Mega projects have not been our best friend. Mega projects in the short term have created tons of jobs and expanded the tax base and all the rest of it. But in the long term, and I'm at a point now where I don't even know what to make of the MOU at this juncture. You know, they talk about the unbundling. And, of course, Jennifer Williams is right. If you build a dam or expand at the Upper Churchill, it comes with transmission. So this is really two big projects: dams, expansion of the Upper Churchill, and, of course, the associated transmission. But where to from here? We do know, just given the Premier's own words, that next April is an aggressive timeline. Coupling Mr. Wilson's resignation, coupling the Premier's words about aggressive timeline, coupling how the Hydro-Quebec and the province of Quebec is speaking about this project, even though, of course, they're speaking about it in glowing terms. They're not going to go back to the province and say, oh, we, you know what, the bed, and so here's a terrible deal for our ratepayers and for the province at large. Of course they're not going to say that, right? They think they've negotiated a great deal, and maybe they have. How great have we done? In no shape or form do I think that Jennifer Williams or Carl Smith or Dennis Mahoney or anybody else that negotiated on our behalf did anything in bad faith. I don't believe that for 1 second. Is it the best possible outcome, best possible deal? I'll leave it up to you. But I get a lot of emails saying that, you know, purposely being sold down the river. I don't believe that. I don't think Jennifer Williams or Carl Smith or Dennis Mahoney or Andrew Fury or anybody else negotiated in bad faith. I don't believe it. And I'll get in trouble for that. But I have no reason to believe it. But the questions about independent review and the terms of reference and did we get the best deal and what the implications are politically or otherwise of Michael Wilson's resignation, I'll leave it up to you. All right. It is a political stress test here now. It really, truly is. It always was. But I think it's been enhanced here in the last couple of days with the report coming from all Newfoundland and Labrador about Mr. Wilson. Your thoughts? All right. How are we doing on the phone, Dave? So Equinor has landed on a company that they're going to, I guess is an agreement in principle, for the construction of the Bay du Nord FPSO if the project goes ahead. So there's a lot to it, obviously. The 3-year delay means if the project gets final investment decision by 2027, it'll be first oil in 2031. But this begs the question, and I believe there's a Trades NL press conference coming up this morning at 11 a.m. about mega projects and benefits agreements and opportunities for people in this province. We don't have the capacity to build the entirety of the FPSO. We don't have the laydown yard or the shipyard that can actually handle it. But we have plenty of opportunity to put a lot of people to work, to whether they refer to topsides work or what have you. So that will beg that massive question. And this always boils back to negotiation between the province and proponents about benefits agreements and how strictly they can be adhered to. Remember, back when we talked Hebron and ExxonMobil, the benefits agreements was struck about construction and hiring priorities, what have you, but they just willfully ignored it. And so consequently, they just paid us some money. Well, I think at the time it was $110 million. money flowing to the provincial government coffers is nowhere as impactful as people getting jobs. I mean, the government do whatever they want with that money, which is not a great thing to begin with, but for individuals to be able to secure some employment, to invest in their retirement, to pay their bills, to avoid the long-distance commute to Fort McMurray or wherever else. So that's where these conversations become extremely important into the long term. You want to take it on? We can do it. All right, a couple more, I suppose. So apropos of not very much of importance, but on this date in 1962, then Prime Minister John Diefenbaker officially opened the Trans-Canada Highway, ceremony at Rogers Pass in Glacier National Park. So 7,476 kilometres through the highway wasn't fully completed to its planned standards, but it was officially open on this date, connecting St. John's to Victoria, BC, of course, with ferries. Which brings me back to Marine Atlantic. I'm still not convinced that the move by the Prime Minister really satisfies a whole lot. Yes, if you book passage on Marine Atlantic and the fares are now half, 50% reduction, that's a good thing for your pocketbook. But with Marine Atlantic bookings already extremely robust, 7,000 more bookings this year when compared to last year, commercial traffic not impacted by any reduction in fee, even though I think it's kind of silly to believe that those savings would be passed on to me and you, the consumer. But does that really change a whole lot beyond saving a few bucks as the traveling passenger? You know, priority booking and the like that people talk about all the time. It's absolutely something we're happy to talk about here this morning. All right. How is the country seemingly not producing and training enough people to work in the healthcare system? There's only 17 med schools in Canada. So while we talk about, incentives and what have you, for the life of me, I can't understand why there's not huge conversations nationwide about expanding seats in the medical schools. And now we know the stories about registered nurses and licensed practical nurses and nurse practitioners, and yes, some good moves afoot regarding MCP billing. But now the shortage, paramedics. So they talk about in the news story that Nova Scotia is actually going to Australia to recruit paramedics. And we know there's long been a shortage in this province. Dave, did we by chance reach out to Rodney Goody yesterday? Is he still with the Paramedics Association? Yeah, I think he is. Yeah, I'll see if we can't get Rodney on to talk about exactly what's going on here. We know when we had all of those fractured, splintered 60 contracts for the road ambulance service and the disparity between the rate of pay and benefits and the like between working in the public or the private sector, much of which has been alleviated with the amalgamation, but a paramedic shortage. Again, the base question, how as a country are we not producing and training enough healthcare professionals, from first responders through GPs and all the other disciplines, technicians, clinicians and otherwise, to staff up the healthcare needs of the country? It's mind-boggling to me. Anyway, you want to talk about it? We can do it. Oh, I was going to get into the NDP cost of platform, and maybe I will throughout the show, but good on the NDP. Now, only one sitting member, elected member in the House of Assembly at this moment in time, of course, Jim Dinn, the leader, the member for St. John Centre. But good on the party for bringing forward a costed platform. Maybe, just maybe, the other two parties can do exactly the same thing, because in a matter of days, we're going to have an election called. The writ will be dropped. We're going to the polls. It'd be nice to know exactly, precisely, who and what we're voting for and how much it costs and what the cost-benefit analysis looks like and what are the measurable thresholds to whether or not it's a good idea based on, looking 12 months down the road and ensuring that the policy and the spend is actually completing or achieving the intended goals. But good on the NDP. All right, so the Prime Minister and Cabinet meeting in Toronto, or the greater Toronto area, beginning today, 2 days of meetings. I think there's probably been a different change in focus of some of the electorate when it comes to Trump and trade, even though that's not gone away. I mean, it still remains an enormous problem that was completely illegitimate to begin with, the crisis that was triggered by the president. But, we got to get back to, of course, the domestic issues. And I've always contended that, yes, international trade, critically important. Yes, diversification of trade, even probably more important than existing, quote-unquote, deals with the Americans. But the basic kitchen table issues, cost of living, healthcare, crime, immigration, whatever it is, need to hear a bit more from this current government. And yes, it would be nice to get a budget table this fall, which apparently is coming in October. But do you want to talk about anything on the federal front or from any angle? You know what to do. All right, we're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. That means you're in the queue to talk about whatever's on your mind. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 1, Daryl, you're on the air.
Oh, hi, Paddy. How you doing today?
Not too bad. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing good. Thank you. The weather is going to be nice all week, so it's all good. Paddy, one call about this morning there. I was listening there recently. What happened down in Lumsden? You had the CAO, I think it was, and a couple of people resigned due to basically severe harassment, I guess is a good way of putting it. And I also heard John Norman, the mayor of Bonavista, telling his story was what happened with him, and probably be good to get him on your show to talk about it. It was very disturbing what I heard what happened to him down there, like rocks being thrown through his windows and stuff like that. And it's sad, really, because when you get elections coming up now, you want to try to get people to run, but when people hear all these stories, what's happening, they're saying, God, I don't think it's worth the anxiety or stress of it all and whatever. But I think I got a sort of a good remedy to it all. And I think what should happen is all the councillors, the mayors, whatever, I think they should get off Facebook altogether. And like if the town wants to have a Facebook itself, then people, I guess, could directly to the town if it's Gander, Lumsden, Bonavista, whatever the case may be. But I think they all wants to get off Facebook. Now, I know that's a good way of communicating. That's how they want to do it. But I think that could sort of solve some of the issues. But by just get off Facebook altogether and just direct it to any issues to the town itself. As anything derogatory or severe, well, then send it to the RCMP or RNC, whatever the case may be, because you're hearing all these stories and it's terrible. And not only on a municipal level, but on a provincial or federal level as well. So, this stuff got to, I think it got to be curtailed and get it under control somehow. And I think municipal affairs, he mentioned about municipal affairs, he didn't get no satisfaction from them or municipalities, NL, whatever. But I guess they got their hands full in trying to deal with all this, I call it shenanigans, when you take a look at the whole picture.
Yeah. And when the stories are told and retold and then third person puts it on a social media platform, it's extremely difficult to know what's up, what's down, what's real, what's not.
Yeah, no, exactly, right. And so I think that could be somewhat solution. Just get off Facebook altogether, the councillors, and as I reiterated, just have a town Facebook itself, and the issues just directed to the town itself, not the councillors themselves personally or whatever case may be. I think that's what they're going to have to do.
Look, social media and politicians, it seemed like a marriage made in heaven. It was a way to be able to connect with constituents and voters without having to bang on their door. Constant communication and updates. But it's manifested itself into something that is extremely unhelpful more often than not. So I know why politicians, and some are actually quite savvy at using it. I won't single out anybody in particular, but some are actually very, very good at using social media to talk to the people of the province in this case. And some are simply quite blunt and they don't reply to anything. And consequently, they just set themselves up for failure. And I'm not so sure that's what they're hoping to achieve, but that's how it comes across to me in many circumstances.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying there, Paddy, and it do make sense. Sometimes they might be trying to communicate through social media in all good faith, and sometimes it does a 360 on them, unfortunately, right? And so, like I said, I think that's the remedy to it. Just get off. I mean, years ago when there's no Facebook, how did they do it? They communicated through open line and, the news outlets, in different various ways, for example. So I think that's what they're going to have to take a good hard look at, because, I heard these two stories, and I'm sure there's lots of others around the province that we're not hearing about as well. But I think it would be good if we get the lady down Lumsden who resigned, CAO, whatever, and the town clerk. I think it would be good if you get them on your show and hear it right from the horse's mouth, and even John Norman. Like when I listened to his story, I won't get into all the details, but it was very disturbing when I listened to him, and I said, "Man, this is crazy." And as a matter of fact, he said there's a councillor down there, Bonavista, now is not going to run anymore due to this stuff. And apparently, this councillor is supposed to be really good, and he was hoping that to keep her on board, but due to all this stuff happening, not going to run again. But like I said, he could testify to that and get the Lums and
Sure.
the two people resigned down. I think that it'll really open up people's eyes when you listen to their story.
Yeah, happy to try to connect with the aforementioned, and I appreciate the call, Daryl. Thank you.
Right, again, thanks, Patty, and thank you for having me on your show. And like I said, all the best to you and staff at BOCM, and your listening audience.
Thanks, Daryl. Have a nice day.
You as well. Thank you.
Right.
Bye.
Very quickly before we get to the break. So, getting peppered with a ton of emails regarding the so-called Castle Law, stand your ground, all based on the charges laid against a homeowner, how he reacted to a home invasion. And, of course, he's facing some pretty serious charges, yet to be fully determined in court, and all the information isn't really out there. But it's being latched on to a lot of people, including Mr. Polyev and others who think that there's got to be a way to make better laws regarding self-defense, defending yourself, defending your home, defending your family. If you look around the legal community, it's pretty fractured on this front. I mean, of course, people need the ability to, in reasonable fashion, defend themselves, their family, and their property, of course, and including me as a homeowner and a family man. But when people paint certain scenarios that might come to pass if so-called castle law was imposed, I don't know why we're so quick to push back. Because the self-defense laws in this country are already pretty strong, and it's all based on the concept of what is or is not reasonable. But just a couple of things that I've seen painted where I'm not so sure why people are dismissing them so out of hand. For starters, unlike the United States, there's more guns than people in the United States, which is a conversation in and of itself. But here's a couple of scenarios that I've seen painted, and I don't know why we don't, deal with them straight on. Okay. So your teenage daughter sneaks her boyfriend in. He's trying to sneak out. Dad wakes up and thinks that he's the intruder and shoots him dead. I mean, we can't pretend things like this don't happen. Then there's even things like no-knock warrants, where police do not have to identify themselves, and they come in the house. Then what? Even if someone says, police, maybe a frightened homeowner in the middle of the night with a .45 in their hand might not even believe it's the police. So the whole concept of reasonable just makes a little bit more sense to me than, no need to retreat. You can fire away, including deadly force, regardless of the reasonable nature of. I think it's a conversation worth having. Look, I'm also, like you, or some of you, or many of you, frustrated to know that a homeowner is facing serious charge because someone broke into their apartment in this case. But I think it's, like most things, when politicians in particular oversimplify complicated matters, that's the red flag for me. That's where we absolutely require some more comprehensive public discourse as opposed to, castle law now. And I guarantee you some of the people who are saying castle law now don't even really know what it means or the consequences of. Anyway, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about the consequences of the resignation of Michael Wilson from the three-person oversight panel looking at the Upper Churchill Memorandum of Understanding and just the Memorandum of Understanding itself. Dave Fardy's in the queue. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Dave Vardy. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy Daly. Good to talk to you.
Happy to have you on the show, sir. Welcome.
I'd like to say a few words about this resignation and the letter and the reasons given by Michael Wilson. I read his documents, 2 documents, a 5-pager and 11-pager. I also saw the redacted version of his letter of resignation. I understand that his redacted letter of resignation indicated the reasons for his resignation. The first point I'd want to bring to you and to your listeners is the fact that that resignation was dated in May. I think it was May the 12th. And it was sent to the chairman of the committee, to Dennis Brown. And as I understand, it was also given to the government of Newfoundland and Labrador. Now, I heard last night the Premier on television speaking to the fact that when he became aware of this, he went to the negotiating team and asked for comments, and the negotiating team said all was well. one thing he didn't say. I would have liked, Paddy, if the Premier had said that I immediately called Mr. Wilson in and asked him why he resigned. I think that that reflects this is a sort of within the silo mentality that people don't want to hear. Government does not want to hear views from outside people. Why wouldn't they have reached out to Mr. Wilson and asked the question, why did he resign from the committee? So I think that was, I would have liked to hear that. That would have been a thing to do, the Premier with an open mind, wanting to hear what the views of the public are, particularly the people he's charged to review this document. So that was the first point I wanted to make. Second point, I guess, is the fact that these reports from Michael Wilson are very comprehensive. They cover the whole MOU. It's quite clear that he is not at liberty to disclose what he learned during that process as a panelist, as a panel member, but he's speaking to issues information that they become privy to the public, from the public. So it's the information he's drawing upon is information that's in the public domain. And he's confirmed in his analysis many of the comments that other people have said. Number one, the fact that the resources being undervalued, the price we're getting for the power is not in keeping with the market price. There's no formula. There's no formula in place to adjust value to changes in energy markets in the future. And a number of comments about the fact that the process is flawed because it's not transparent. And what we need is a transparent process. And he speaks to the fact that commercial sensitivity has been trumping public engagement and the public's right to know. And he's arguing that there's a public interest in transparency here that transcends the commercial sensitivity. So that's a huge issue. And I think those are important points coming out of this. Some of the very important points coming out of these reports. And I think that there needs to be a different review, a different approach to this whole thing.
Sure.
Just before I make one other point, Eddie, before you jump in, and that is that what this oversight process is essentially a review of whether the definitive agreements being negotiated are in keeping with the MOU. That's an oversight role. We don't need an oversight at this stage. We're not at the oversight stage. What we need is an evaluation of what are the best options. Does this meet our requirements? What are the objectives that the government of Newfoundland and Labrador have set for their negotiations for policy, energy policy? What are we trying to achieve? Obviously, we're trying to get the best value possible, and are we doing that? But we need an evaluation as to whether these negotiations with Quebec are achieving our public policy objectives, and if they don't, then what are the best alternatives to achieving in order to achieve those objectives? So what the oversight process provides is not what we need right now. What we need is not oversight, it's a review. It's an independent review as to whether this is a good deal, and if it's not, then what are the best alternatives to it?
First thought when I saw this story yesterday is, if the resignation was in May, surely the government had to know in May, on the 12th, when the letter was submitted to Dennis Brown, consequently passed off to the government. So just like everything else in this world, when we find out so far after the fact, it just further plants seeds of doubt and worry and concern. So I just, for the life of me, don't understand why governments do this. And they all do it. Successive governments have done exactly that. Then this seems to me, it's all about price. So he's making the distinction between price, cost, and value. And they are three different things. It may seem like a hair split, but it's not. Price and cost are, defined items, defined numbers. We can lean in on them. Value is a bit more of a floating target, and it's a concept as opposed to something definitive. So I understand where he's going there. And a couple of things. So some of what he says, of course, has to be taken very seriously. He was able to look at a lot more information than I have. But things like the posture and negotiating tactics of Hydro-Quebec may dominate the structure and flow of ongoing negotiations and balance the outcomes in favour of Hydro-Quebec. That kind of stuff is nowhere near as important as price, cost, and value, is it? Because Hydro-Quebec is the biggest bully on the block. I mean, they're always going to come to the negotiating table like they have with the last 7 times where the only option was to take them to court. So they're going to act like the bully no matter what Mr. Wilson or you or me or Des Sullivan or Gabe Gregor or anyone else thinks.
Daddy, you know, we're being told that this is an asset that's going to be stranded because we don't act quickly. And but the reality is that we've got 16 years from Monday, okay, which is September 1st, to get this thing right. We've got 16 years. First thing we should be doing is finding out what is the market out there and how can we access that market. And what we should be doing is putting out an invitation for proposals. We shouldn't be jumping into bed with Hydro-Quebec right from the beginning. We should be, maybe we will deal with Hydro-Quebec, but I don't think that's where we should start. Quebec might be this ending point, but what we have to remember is that Hydro-Quebec is offering the lowest prices in North America. This is the market. It's not the preferred market we need to be into. We need to be into a high-value market. This is not the market that's best for us. Yes, the Hydro-Quebec has got the capacity to build Gull Island, unlike very few other players. But in terms, I'm thinking mostly the Upper Churchill, because the heart and the jewel of this MOU is the Upper Churchill, not the Gull Island project. That's a secondary consideration. The Upper Churchill is the real jewel here, because when it comes to cost and value, the cost is virtually fixed. The value is open, and so the market revenue we can get out of this is enormous, because mainly for the very reason that the cost is virtually fixed, both generation and transmission. So I think that's really important here. That we go at this in the right way. We need to go back to square one and say, what is the best way to market our energy? And I think that for us now to go back to Hydro-Quebec for another 51 years, locking us in. If you look at the agreements that Hydro-Quebec has entered into in the United States, maximum 20 years, a 51-year agreement with no reopener is just it's a no-brainer. This is not something we should be doing. It's bad policy. It's bad public policy. Number one, for us to be getting in bed with a single buyer and with no opportunity to sell the power, because the way you read the fine print, as I've done of this agreement, this MOU, if we can't use the power in the province, we have to sell it to Quebec. And so that places us in a situation where we don't have much choice. We need to have that choice. We need to be able to exercise that choice. Now, maybe over the next 16 years, we will be able to get some access to transmission rights, but I would have thought that we should be able to get any discussions with Quebec should be predicated on the quid pro quo that they give us transmission rights. We shouldn't be prepared to talk to Hydro-Quebec unless they're prepared to give us access to transmission rights to sell power to third parties. This gives us none of that. This gives us none of that. We're back to square one on this whole thing, and Michael Wilson, I think, has blown this thing right out of the water.
Maybe. So let's talk about access to the broader market, because that is probably the linchpin of all of this stuff. Now, we know full well, based on history, that Hydro-Quebec and the province of Quebec have completely been unwilling to look at the 1969 contract as a standalone basis. And you don't need me to tell you that, because we all know it to be true. Access to market. So, of course, we're talking a lot of hypotheticals here, but that's an important part of looking down the road. A lot of this is speculative and hypothetical. Quebec at this point, and maybe into the future, is going to be the customer for power at the Upper Churchill and, let's just say, for instance, Gull, if and when that gets built, which I have no reason to believe it won't be. Because if we talk about getting out of the province with power from the Churchill River, there's two options. It's either Quebec, number one, or to mimic what was the transmission project associated with Muskrat, which means another 1,100 kilometres worth of transmission lines through the long-range mountains. And in this circumstance, not to carry 824 megawatts, but to carry over 2,000 megawatts. Then it's a maritime link. This one was built for $1.5 billion, carries 500 megawatts. So just for ballparky numbers, it's like $20 billion to get the power off the Churchill River, but not using the province of Quebec. So how do we square that circle of the historical abuse of the 69 contract, the distrust of the province of Quebec, but the reality of the money and the geography of how you get power off the Upper Churchill and or Gull? What do you think?
Muskrat Falls has demonstrated to us that the Anglo-Saxon route is not economic. We confirmed the study done back in Smallwood's time that is technically feasible, not economic. I would say the same is probably true and will be true for the next 20 years. That building a super LIL is not the answer to this, and building another cables across the two straits, not the answer to this. But you know something, one of the things that the negotiations with Quebec have demonstrated is the best they can offer is a very low price, and that low price is an attractive option for all those artificial intelligence companies that are building up where the demand for energy is escalating. And why can't they come to Newfoundland and Labrador, in which case we can deliver the power to them, to their plant, wherever they want to use it within our province. So that's an option, I think, that we have not fully explored, that needs to be explored. We have got to look at every way we can deal with this without having to deal with Quebec, without having to negotiate with Quebec and put them in the driver's seat. We have to be at that table with Mark Carney when he's talking about the free trade agreement. What we're saying is, no, we don't want to be part of the free trade agreement because it's going to affect the brewing industry in Newfoundland and Labrador. We got bigger stakes here to fry. We got bigger issues. We have got to be able to sell our power across Quebec. We need the transmission access, and here's a venue where we can get it. We got 16 years to do this. So why don't we do that? Why don't we try to put those things on the front burner and put energy policy where it should be?
Even if provisions, like if Mark Carney is not the first Prime Minister to talk about an East-West energy corridor, you can go all the way back to John Diefenbaker and hear the exact same conversation. If it ever comes to pass, like even if there's a pathway to definitive agreements, to not have provisions for the change of the water on the beans, including the possibility for the East-West energy corridor, including pipelines, energy transmission, whether it be from hydro or otherwise, if that becomes a reality, that changes everything. If the federal government is going to somehow subsidize the construction of transmission lines in the province of Quebec, which the province is actually lobbying for right now, that changes things too. So to not include those provisions, whether it be with the oversight panel and the eventual contracts, is just misreading the possibilities into the future.
I think one of the biggest things that struck me about this, and I think that Wilson would agree, is the lack of an escalation clause here. We have the notion for an escalation clause, but after all this time, we need to know exactly what it's going to be, and we need to know that prices are going to rise. And one of the things that Michael Wilson is saying here is that the $33.8 billion is a targeted amount. It might not be absolutely etched in stone. There may be some variance. You know something, myself and one of my colleagues went in. We spent 3 hours with the senior people of Hydro back several months ago. And the key issue on the table was is the $33.8 billion a fixed number? Fixed in, is it something that's targeted? Is it fixed? We came away from that with a clear sense that this is not a number that's going to change. What we want to the question that we want to answer is if there's a 100% increase in the relative price of electric power over the next 20 years, how is that going to affect us? We don't have an answer to that question.
Well, I asked Jennifer Williams that yesterday. To paraphrase or to summarize, that $30+ billion number is the floor, not the ceiling.
That's not the impression. You see, she's also said that there's no floor, okay? Because in the House of Assembly, she told the House of Assembly that they didn't want to negotiate a floor, because if they negotiated the floor, then Hydro-Quebec would demand that it be a ceiling as well. That was the discussion that took place in the House of Assembly. So no, the $33.8 billion is not a floor. It's not a floor and it's not a ceiling, but it's targeted, and it may not be absolutely fixed. But there's a certain very, very finite elasticity to this that gives me the clear impression that we don't have a proper formula for escalation. And that's the key issue, along with water management. Now, that's the other thing I wanted to speak to you very quickly about, is there's no water management agreement. There's best efforts on water management. And with all of the emphasis on these new projects, the upgrades, and the CF2, these are very little capacity. There's very little energy. There's mostly capacity. It's mostly about essentially being able to get more out of the power at peak times, more out of the dams at peak times. And that's going to have a big impact on water management and Hydro-Quebec are going to want to be in the driver's seat when it comes to that. So I see a big tug of war taking place with regard to water management. I would have expected, with all the discussions that have taken place over the years, we would have a water management agreement at this point. We don't have one. I think it's going to be extremely difficult to get a water management agreement, and I think Hydro-Quebec is going to want to get at least as much control over the Churchill River through any new agreement as they got in the past in 1969, because you know and I know they control the water on that river because they could demand the power whenever they wanted, and so that's what they're going to want, and it's in spades now because of this concern about capacity. Because back in 1969, the world was all about energy. It wasn't about capacity. Now we're in a world where you got all these renewable sources, the wind and the sun, and all these things with the valleys. And so Hydro-Quebec has got a fully articulated plan for wind energy. We're banning wind energy in Newfoundland and Labrador. We haven't changed the legislation yet, as far as I know.
We have, though, the amendments are also to the Atlantic Accord to allow for offshore wind proposals, which have yet to come to pass, but that has been dealt with legislatively speaking. David, I'm really late for the break, but I appreciate your time, sir. Stay in touch.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye. Let's get that break in. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line 3. Craig, you're on the air.
Craig, Patty, how you doing this morning?
Not too bad. How about you?
Not bad, man. I'm from Greens Harbour. I'm on disability. I just came from open heart surgery 6 weeks ago. I'm living in a camper with no electricity. My septic tank is full. I got no power, and I'm trying to get out to Steve Crocker for the last 2 weeks, and I can't get no. I get his voicemail all the time. So I was told to call you, trying to get some help, get some housing or something like that. I was froze last night, and night before last was very cold.
I'm sorry to hear that. So, are you looking for something in particular from me, or are you hoping to this call spurs Steve Crocker to call you back?
I'm looking for Steve Crocker to call me back.
Okay, so what we can do on that front is now we know for sure either Minister Crocker himself and or someone in his office are absolutely listening to this program. If you've got messages from Craig regarding the issues that you just heard, please just call the man back. How's that?
I've been doing it, Patty, for 2 weeks, and I get his voicemail with his secretary. And that's all I do. And she don't call me back. So, and I'm out here, and it's getting colder and colder every night. And I'm in a hard situation.
It sounds like it. And I wish I could do something for you here live on the show. But what we can do is what we just did is, please, Minister Crocker's office, can you get back to Craig? He's got some serious issues that need some attention. So hopefully this call achieves exactly that.
Appreciate it, Patty.
I appreciate your time. I wish you good luck. Let me know how it works out.
Oh, well, thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Yeah, and I know there's probably a huge amount of voicemails and emails that flow into all of the members of the House of Assembly, all the cabinet ministers, and the Premier's office. And yes, you might not get a return call immediately, but, you know, when folks are struggling the way that obviously Craig is and others are, it'd be probably very helpful to get back to them. All right, let's take a break. When we get back, we'll talk about the ferry service, the more conversation regarding the MOU, and then a little taste of Ireland. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 4. Charlie, you're on the air.
Paddy, just quick there on, have you heard of a shrouded wind turbine?
A what? Sorry?
Shrouded wind turbine.
No, I have not.
Okay, it's a turbine that's developed, I think Ventum is the company. It's a thing with like slats that slant upwards, and then you got your blade up above that, and you can place the thing. It's like a box on top of a building, and because of the design, it's more efficient in trapping wind, and it looks like. I think they've gone beyond the prototype. I'm sure they have. I believe it's on the market, but I'm not really certain of that. And you think sometimes these turbines we have that we're talking about getting for Newfoundland, I wonder how long before they'll be obsolete when you consider options like this. Just a thought.
Yeah, and I mean, I suppose that's as much an issue for the proponents as it is for the government necessarily.
Yes. Anyway, it's quite a design. If you get a chance to look at it, there apparently it was thought about way back by Darwin, and then they had a sketch of it made way back then. And the crowd that came up with it now said they had no access, so didn't realize that at the time. So it's an old idea too.
Fair enough.
Patty, just a quick thing on religion. Do you mind talking? You said we can talk about anything, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Do you have the idea that the divine God, whatever you want to call, gives unconditional love to its creation, its people, his or her people?
Sure.
So, if we have unconditional love, how does that tie in with all the not denominations, the religions of the world, Muslim, Hebrew, Christian especially, maybe Hindu, that there's a system of rewards and punishments. So if you're given free will and you go about that completely, if it's unconditional love, why would you be punished for things that you would do with that condition of free will?
Pretty big question.
Does that not imply that it's conditional love as opposed to unconditional?
I'm pretty sure I know what you're asking. So it's generally seen and heard as a very derogatory term, but there's some cafeteria Catholicism on the go, right? People pick and choose what aspects of the Bible that they subscribe to and abide by. And so that's always going to be the case. There's very little in the way of absolutists out there, unless we're talking about if you talk about Muslims and the jihadis, and if you talk about Catholics and, adhering to one part or another of the Bible, like even in the book of Leviticus, which people hang their hat on regarding, say, for instance, gay marriage and homosexuality, what have you. There's also other parts of Leviticus that people do not abide by, giving 2 doves to the priest and all that kind of. Again, people get mad at me when I say it, but it's 100% true and very easily verifiable that people pick and choose what they want to abide by. Simple as that.
Well, we've made God and the system into a transactional. It's almost like a Trump thing. You got to pay me here. It's a transactional system. If you're going to say you got to do this or you got to do that, or else you'll get this reward for heaven if you're good, and if you're bad, you'll get to hell. To me, you can't have an unconditional love, as Jesus talked about, and then the churches that we know, like I said, the Muslims as well, and the Jewish faith, you can't talk about having conditions if you have unconditional love. It doesn't make sense.
Okay.
You agree with that?
Well, it doesn't make sense, but a lot of things associated with religion don't make a lot of sense anyway. And that's not picking on one faith or another. I just think that is pretty fair observation. I mean, certainly given my lifetime.
Yeah. If you were born a Muslim, you would, given the average Muslim, you would think that you have the answers. The Quran is the right way to go, and if you're born an Hindu, the same thing, and so on. So I think it's all very funny that because of an accident of birth, we all think in our system we were born that's the right one. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. Just a few scattered thoughts.
Well, I mean, all members of the faith, certainly the most staunch, they think their faith is the right one and possibly the only right one. So again, I think there's a lot of human nature bleeds into that conversation, to be honest.
Yeah. Patty, a few questions on the MOU. If Michael Wilson and Jennifer Williams are disagreeing on what's said in the MOU, what chance is it for us public to figure that out, right?
Very difficult question because, I mean, if I compare and contrast what we've heard yesterday from Jennifer Williams versus what we see and read from Michael Wilson or hear from David Vardy or anybody else who's, opposed to the project, they're two completely different conversations. It's amazing to me, which leaves me completely and utterly confused, which I hate to be because this is such an important piece of business that we're trying to get done and we're trying to get right. That's the ultimate goal for me. I don't care who's right. I just want to get it done right. It doesn't matter, once again, who has the right idea or the wrong idea. I just want to make sure that Liberal, Tory, opposed or in favour of, if we get it right, that's all that matters to me. Just a couple of very vague and broad comments on it. Look, if this conversation was about negotiating something with Nova Scotia versus Quebec, the conversation would sound and feel different. It just would. There's some baked-in hostility and distrust of the province of Quebec and Hydro-Quebec, which really does mold or shape some of this conversation. I firmly believe it's not necessarily 100% about the numbers. Some of it's about what we see from 1969 and how that jades our conversation going forward regarding Quebec. I think that's a big part of it. Then, of course, there's the politics of it. For some who are all in with the Liberal Party of Newfoundland and Labrador or Canada, then they'll have a slightly different view of this because of how they vote. Same thing with people who are sick of the Liberals and are just trying to hope that the Tories get in. They'll be opposed to this just based on a bit of human nature. So I'm pretty confused on this, and I've spent a lot of brain power trying to dissect and absorb the contents of the MOU and thinking down the road about what might change into the future, but it's been a real struggle. Well,
one very simple question is the escalator clause, is it 6 cents that is the maximum, or can we go above that? Even such a simple question, is there an answer for that one?
I asked exactly that of Jennifer Williams yesterday, and the basic summary answer is yes.
So the rest of the people keep saying it's not. So the public is going to be a little bit confused there. But anyway, just one or two more. Are the PCs committed to an independent review?
Yeah.
Okay. Because they should be now after that VOCM survey there that they had, or NTV survey, showing that the public is mistrustful of the MOU, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, just a few things to. I think there was one more thing. Oh yeah, why are we finding out now that the guy resigned in May?
That's an excellent question. I mean, I can't picture a scenario where the resignation letter was submitted to Dennis Brown and that he did not give it to Premier Hogan or the cabinet or whoever, whatever the case may be, because it's not a good look if the Premier just found out yesterday that this happened in May. It's far too important. It really reminds me of the secretly approved cabinet golden handshake, that severance issue that when the Premier found out or was asked by the media, he said he just found out about it. I mean,
yes, I was just going to say that. Okay, give that example. That's the second one now, right?
Yeah. Look, you have to believe he knew. And if he didn't, then there's a problem with the people working around Premier Hogan to not keep him in the loop with some of these things, because this is just too important. And given the fact that the Premier himself has said that this election is as much about the MOU as about anything else, if that's the case, and there was a government-approved 3-person panel to provide oversight, whatever that actually means, then to not know what's going on with the members of the panel is a problem.
Paddy, very quickly, the Gull Island thing is there's some misconceptions there. We have a stake in that. They're paying for our stake, several $1 billion. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
What do we get? Do we get, after that's on stream and it's being sold, do we get dividends because of our stake, or do we get a royalty from it when we sell to Quebec? How does that work?
Yeah, we get the same revenue equity breakdown as currently exists at the Upper Churchill. Same thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks very much. That's news. Some of that's news to me, and thank you.
Appreciate your time. Thanks, Charlie.
Okay.
Bye-bye. All right, let's get a break in. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 2. Mike, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Good morning to you.
Paddy, yeah, first of all, I'd like to comment on the people who are probably going to call in and say, move the people off the islands, get rid of the ferry service. But to me, they're hypocrites, because there's people onto the mainland feels the same way about the total island of Newfoundland, of if they're a needy province, we're giving our money to them and sponsoring a ferry service and that, get rid of that stuff.
Yeah, except that's enshrined in the Constitution.
Yeah, I know, but the thing is there's people on the mainland, I think same way as these people do, that, we should move too. But another thing too is that all the people that are around the bays, I don't know if they realize it or not, but this Liberal government is planning on all the roads going off the main thoroughfares. The people in the communities have to pay for the snow clearing and upgrading of the roads leading up to all of this. So it's a gradually decline in all the services to people, say, that are a bit remote. So
Where
Mike,
where do you see that the government says that all of a sudden people in these communities are going to have to pay a separate bill for snow clearing or what have you?
Yeah, well, what this Liberal government is doing, they're mandated back years ago. A lot of these communities that go nowhere, just out to a community without any industry or anything like that, their move was to, close off these roads, or if people want to stay there, to let them fund their roads. And all the government wants is responsibility to maintain the thoroughfares and all the large routes. That's going back years ago to the Liberal Party.
Yeah, but none of that has happened.
But anyway, no, there's downgrading of the roads. Look at all the people who got problems with the roads. But anyway, that's not the subject you want. I just wanted to point out the being hypocrites and that, whatever, talking about other people, whether we should get rid of the ferries. But right now, they've got serious problems with the management of the ferry services. A couple of employees got suspended to one of the new bills. They don't have the crew to run it. They're trying to bring in a captain crew from BC, going to go on a day's training that, to me is not adequate for these vessels. There's a serious issue with the hiring practices of the government. They bullied the employees. They can't get employees. They can't get crew members, all because of the attitude coming out of the Federation Building and Lewisport. This management is totally anti-crew members, and that it's ridiculous the way that they're treated. And people go there, good engineers and everything else that go there, they don't last very long, and they're gone. They're trying to work them long hours, extended shifts, everything else, not giving them any chance. And all of this stuff is going to the detriment of these services, and also to the waste of, they just completed tens of millions of dollars in repairs. Now the crews don't have the training, none of them training for these new systems and that. It's just as bad or worse than what it was when they first came out. Now they've got it all changed for no reason. Now the deputy minister is gone that authorized all of this spending when he was running an office. Excuse me, Patty. These people now working in these offices are talking about how he ran a tight ship. They had to stick to the budgets. But when contractors came in, there was multi-millions of dollars to be spent, no questions asked, and we've got one hell of a pile of millions of dollars wasted. And this is what I want to address, is the millions of dollars wasted, not what the ferry system is costing. It could be costing a lot less if we had adequate management in there, somebody to run it properly, which is not there. And the minister that left there, now he's gone with Hydro, the deputy minister. I mean, to say he signed off on a lot of these millions that people in the offices know when they're talking about it now, because he's gone of what he was doing in there. And why he's gone with Hydro, I don't know. But, he's caused a lot of problems. He's caused a lot of problems with other departments where he worked. But all of this stuff told us up that this Liberal government, it's got to go. Not only this now with the power and everything else, the agreements, and John Hogan, all the arguments, the emails I had with him, could not get answers for it. There's a lot of contracts that are on the go are very debatable whether they're legal, even ever allowed, taken by our healthcare services. Our healthcare services now are all totally, and getting worse and worse every day, controlled by one large international company that people in Newfoundland are not only aware of that they're there, and they're secretly doing it. And this Liberal government is just blatant now in everything that they're doing. And here's the Liberal government now. They're trying to capitalize on these fire systems and the struggling people.
What?
To capitalize on it to get elected, to put themselves forward. Oh, we're caring people. We're going to do this for the fire people and that, whatever. As far as I'm concerned, and a lot of people, they're only putting on a show because the election is coming up to put themselves in the limelight. Hagee on the radio every day, and John Hogan and that and stuff. And as far as I'm concerned, they're only there, going on this with this concerned people or whatever. And, this totally...
So, do you think if this was a month after an election and they had 4 full years to come, that they wouldn't say they're going to try to support people who lost their homes due to wildfire?
Not to the degree that they are. I don't think so.
All right.
I got serious doubts about it. Nothing, this Liberal government and John Hogan, I wouldn't put anything past them.
I don't even know if it's a Liberal or Tory thing. I mean, I can write the speeches or the presentations by politicians, regardless of the party that they're with, regardless of where they are in their term. If there's something like a wildfire, we all know what they're going to say. Tories or Liberals or NDPers or Independents, it's going to be the same rhetoric regardless of where they are in their term, and I think it's all really quite predictable. And hopefully there is actually support coming, whether it be from the Federal Disaster Relief Fund and or provincial government supports, whatever that looks like in the future, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. Mike, I appreciate the time. We've got to get going.
Yeah, but just one other thing, like with this stuff that's on the go, I think there now that it's time for a change. And like you said, maybe the PCs won't be any better. But
I didn't say
what's
that.
going on there is right now is blatant, total loss of waste of money. Tens of millions of dollars that my head there that's gone from due to incompetence, and especially in that department and some other departments. And I got A-tips in there now requesting a copy of the Cummins contract. I've been months trying to get it waiting when it's there waiting to be printed off or sent to me in an email. But I can't get the A-tip request down into Eastern Health and the Department of Justice. So all delays. Anyway, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Mike. All the best.
Yeah, bye.
All right, bye-bye. Let's see here. So we're right up against the break. So Ralph Tapper's in the queue, president of the Irish Newfoundland... Is it Connections or Collections? It's Connections, isn't it? Connections, yeah. So we'll hear from Ralph. There's a few things on the go with him and his association. And, of course, lots of direct ties and links between this province and Ireland. Even though I think many times we think about the province as being predominantly Irish, but it's not. It's predominantly English. And the breakdown was pretty clear. But, of course, tons of folks of Irish origin and background, including yours truly, here on the program. Jennifer's also in the queue. It's got a PSA coming up. And then tons of time to speak with you. Quick check in on the Twitter. Or VOCM Open Line. You can follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, Ralph Tapper's in the queue, and then you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5, say more to the president of the Irish Newfoundland Connections. That's Ralph Tapper. Good morning, Ralph. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Good morning to you.
Great show.
Thanks a lot. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Paddy, I just want to report our group, the Irish Newfoundland Labrador Irish Connections. We've been in business since 2007. We have a cultural exchange, and we have gatherings in Ireland, and we rotate years and in Ireland and then back in Newfoundland. So the feature of our exchange is that we...
Ralph, just let me interrupt for a second. Ralph, the phone line is not a good one. I'm going to get David to put you on hold, call you right back and clean that up. Very quickly, while we try to reconnect with Ralph, going to make sure we have a non-compromised phone line. It's just a couple of things that people refer to a lot when it comes to the Quebec side of the negotiation and why they need more power. I mean, I follow along the news in Quebec related to energy for the obvious reasons. We have to go down these paths. They have rejected a ton of industrial and commercial applications in that province, including data centers to fuel artificial intelligence. I don't really know why so many people think that that's just such a great thing, is to bring AI and data centers to where we live. Like, for instance, Labrador. If we talk about quadrupling the Labrador power recall block to around 1,200 megawatts, in large part, that would be to advance mining expansion and the possibility for new mines to open. And a mine, when compared to, say, a data center, is way more jobs, way more revenue and royalties to the government, and just a way better potential use of power. Artificial intelligence data centers draw copious amounts of power, provide minimal jobs into the long term. So I'm not so sure why people lean on that as some sort of economic boon, because it's an economic boon to the companies. You know, just look no further than the trillions of dollars we're talking about between Amazon and Bezos, Meta and Zuckerberg are talking about investing in AI. Not for the benefit of governments, but the benefit for them and their shareholders, right? Okay, see, I have a better line on 5. Ralph, you're back on the air. Hi, Ralph.
Oh, good morning again, Paddy.
Good morning again. Line is much better. Go right ahead, sir.
Oh, great. Okay. No, I just wanted to inform people the Irish Newfoundland Connections. We've been in business since 2007, and we have a cultural exchange between Ireland and Newfoundland. Every second year, we send people to Ireland, and vice versa. We have a group come here. So we are doing fine. Our last gathering was in 2019 in Placentia and Carbonair. And then COVID came along, so we had to shelve it for several years. So we're back in business now. We have 43 Irish coming over to Newfoundland in mid-September. So I just wanted to inform people on that. We're going to have groups and events come together in the St. John's area, and then that's for 3 days, and then for another 3 days out in the Branch Point Lance area.
So what goes on in these cultural exchanges, Ralph?
Well, the travelers are host in private homes. That's one of the big features. But we have different events scheduled. In St. John's, we have the opening ceremonies at the Knights of Columbus. That'll be on September the 16th. Then we have another kitchen party at the Justina Centre in Outer Cove on the 17th. And then in Torbay on the 18th, we have the Ali O'Brien concert, which is a big, usual thing associated with these gatherings.
Obviously, the connection between this province and Ireland is very real for the obvious reasons. About how many people participate going either way?
Well, before COVID, we had usually 60 people come and go, right? This year we have 43 coming from Ireland, and and one of the special guests this time around is the Mayor of Waterford, actually, Seamus Ryan. He's among the group. So there's again, with the Irish, there's a lot of singers and accordion players or whatever. They bring their own music, and we'll have at the opening ceremonies, we have Jackie Sullivan, Carla Pilgrim, and so we're going. It's going to be a party as usual, to say the least. The same way out in Branch, and I really got to thank the people out in Branch in that area, because we actually had a module scheduled out in the Carbonair Harbour Grace area, but because of the fires 2 weeks ago, we had to scramble, and we thought it best that we cancel that out there. And again, we got to thank those communities for coming together to help out. But unfortunately, we had to move, and luckily we got Branch and Point Lance on board fairly quickly. So it's great. Things are back on track.
That's the good news. Waterford, interestingly, for folks in the St. John's, Waterford is the sister city of St. John's in Ireland.
Exactly.
Officially.
And I've been talking to Mayor Breen, and he's going to get together with Mayor Ryan to have some meetings, and obviously they'll be at all our events as well.
I really appreciate the time, Ralph. Keep us in the loop.
Thank you, Paddy, very much.
My pleasure. All the best.
Okay.
All right, bye-bye. Ralph Tapper, who's the president of the Irish Newfoundland Connections. So that's interesting, a cultural attaché of some 60 people going either way between here and Ireland. And Dave, you ever been to Ireland? It's really absolutely worth it. Let's hear. Let's go to line number 1. Jennifer, you're on the air.
Oh. Hi, Pat. Jennifer from Legion on Blackmarsh Road.
Hi there.
We're having another flipper dinner September 15th. Takeouts between 4 and 5:30. Eat-in is at 6 p.m. and our tickets are still $25.
Sounds good. How can you keep it at $25 when everything else seems to be much more expensive, and things that I was buying for $25 tickets or takeouts, whatever, are now $30? How are you able to keep it at $25?
Well, we like to keep it at $25 for all our regulars. Everyone who gets our flipper dinner are always the regular people who come back every time. So we try to keep it affordable as we can.
Like you would, and like you should. So when is it again? Sorry, Jennifer?
September 15th. Takeout is between 4 and 5:30. Eat-in is at 6 p.m. And we also are offering stuffed chicken breasts also.
Terrific.
For the alternative meal.
I appreciate the time. Usually when you call the program, the result is a sellout. So, folks, if you're interested, get in touch with Jennifer at the Legion, Blackmarsh Road. I guess that's branch 1, right?
Yes, yeah.
Right on. Give out the number, Jennifer.
579-8300, or you can pop in. The bar is open 12 to 12 every day.
Thanks, Jennifer. Good luck with it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Here you go. Flipper dinner once a year for me, and that's all I can handle. Just a couple of quick things. So, again, just a friendly reminder, just because I don't bring it up doesn't mean we're not willing and wanting to talk about it. And this is an email in reference to the way the court case regarding Tony Humby and the 72 sexual assault charges that he's facing is unfolding. I'm following along. I'm reading the news reports and the updates daily. We know we've heard from a complainant, and the stories are obviously very traumatic. But the question I'm being asked is about the adversarial system that is criminal justice in this country. Look, every defendant, regardless of what you think of Tony Humby or Bruce Escott or any other person who's charged with a crime, they have the right to a vociferous defense. Where it gets tricky in cases like this, for instance, when complainants, witnesses, are taken to task on details, fuzzy details and timelines and what have you, we know a lot more about how the brain works and how people react to traumatic events than we did, say, 50, 60 years ago. So whether it be about details and dates and times and how trauma impacts your recollection of it, the email that I'm referring to says it's really patently unfair. I get the sentiment, but what's the alternative? If you can't have defendants, because it might be you or me charged with whatever type of potential crime in the future. I'm not talking about Tony Humby specific stuff. But how do I get a vigorous defense if my attorney is unable to ask these questions? I get how it's uncomfortable. Talk about that trial, and then you talk about other circumstances of sexual assault and people being painted into a corner about a fuzzy detail here or there for something that may have happened years ago and was extremely traumatic and has long-term impacts. So it's interesting to follow those types of cases because the system is drawn up that way. Whether or not it's the best system or the most appropriate use of resources, whether or not it's a tactic or a strategy that sits well with one person or another, it's how the system is designed, for better or worse. And we're happy to talk about it. But those stories are completely disgusting. And he has yet to have his day in court, yet to have a verdict come down in this particular case. And remember, it's not only this is not the end of the road. All those charges of human trafficking are going to be in another case. It's only the third time in the province's history when any charges of human trafficking have been laid. The other two circumstances, they were withdrawn before it made it to the end of the court proceedings, but that's yet to be understood by the Tony Humby related case. And on that front, I'm not quick to say public inquiry here, public inquiry there, because in some corners people call for it at every turn. But understanding how the system works and these historical cases of allegations of sexual abuse against minors, and in this circumstance, some who are very vulnerable, living in group home settings or what have you. So whether it be how the department handles it, and whether it be how the advocate's office handles it, and yes, how it's handled by law enforcement. And in this case, we have now come to learn that there were no charges laid as far back as 2007 because the complainants were unwilling to file a formal statement. So without that, you can't really proceed. But to understand how that has worked in the past probably does deserve a little bit more than just what the government has decided insofar as review and oversight. All right. Someone is asking me, am I able to read this particular PSA on the station because it's supporting another radio station, in this case, VOWR. We have a good relationship with VOWR here at this station. Our engineers do some work on their behalf at VOWR, so I'm happy to do it. So they've got a fundraising event coming. Let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger so I can read it. Second annual fundraising concert, Celebration of the 70s, starring Mick Davis, Jackie Sullivan and Carla Pilgrim, Justin Fancy, Peter Halley, Brothers in Stereo, Dana Parsons, Joel Thomas Hines, Kelsey Arsenault, Michael Bursey, David Chafe and Annabeth Lovies, and then there's a cast of aging arts. So who's the house band? Oh, Paul Kinsman, Chris LeDrew, Paul Stamp, Boomer Stamp, Sandy Morris, Glenn Parsons, Joe Tompkins. At the Holy Heart Theatre, September the 13th at 8 p.m. $50 plus taxes and fees. You can go to the box office at Holy Heart. So the website is holyhearttheatre.com or 709-579-4424. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 1. James, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
Doing okay, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing okay. I'm not underground, so I'm good.
Good man.
I'm just calling today to talk about. I've spoken to you once before, perhaps a couple of months ago, regarding homelessness in St. John's. I'm particularly one of those people that are homeless in St. John's, and I know that most of your public and most of your listeners understand and appreciate the fact that homelessness is a problem in St. John's. Unfortunately, the people that run the homeless shelters seem to think that every single person in that or any particular homeless shelter should be out there working, should be out there, earning cash, doing whatever. They don't care if you're selling drugs or working on your oil rigs. My discussion today I'd like to talk about is, the total number of individuals experiencing homelessness. If you go on Google, it says there's 183 people in St. John's experiencing homelessness. That's correct, 183. Now, you're an intelligent man. You obviously know that's not correct.
No.
My question is, living in this situation, I'm an educated person. I'm just going through a poor time right now. It's a bad situation, bad luck, whatever you want to call it. Blame it on myself, whatever it may be. But what's happening right now, the way that the other people are being treated, I'm not talking about myself at all when I speak of this right now. I'm talking about the indigenous people, the people that have been, had everything stolen from them or, divorced and just lost everything. These are people that are being treated with unbelievable disrespect. And I'm talking, every homeless shelter you can go from 10 St. Clair to the Gathering Place to Six Patrick, whatever. The workers in here are great. It's not their issue. It's not their problem that I'm calling about. I'm talking about, the Ashley Benz, the people who own the shelters, the ones that are, forcing homeless people to either, try and survive on the streets, leave the province if possible, go further north, go further south, or take their own lives, whatever it may be. But it's out of control right now. As I'm calling you right now, I will promise you right now that Ashley is listening to this phone call, and whoever else is listening to this phone call, I perhaps won't be allowed back in the homeless shelter that I'm staying at tonight for retribution. This is the way it is in St. John's.
Can you give me some specifics about what you mean by how people are being treated?
Okay, well, let me give you an example. You've got a homeless man that has perhaps some issues with perhaps, say, like a divorce that's gone through and has just down his luck. He may have had, perhaps maybe lots of money in his past or a house and a great life. Situations happen to everybody in every part of the world, no matter where you're talking, from England to wherever. Here, as it stands, the people that work here in the homeless area, and I'm not saying everybody. The Gathering Place is one place that is so helpful to the homeless. Absolutely, you cannot take away from that. But you take away the outer ring of the homeless center of St. John's, being Six Patrick, being 10 St. Clair. There is not. I apologize. There's not one person that works there that has ever been homeless. And every person that I'll give you an example. At 10 St. Clair, there's not one English person there. There's not one Newfoundlander. There's not one Canadian that works there. Ashley and her husband, who is of Punjabi descent, have hired a complete staff of people from India, and people that are living and not living perhaps, but just working there, that treat the people that work there as if they're complete lowlifes and they should know better. Now, I have the recording still. I put my phone down one night, and the in where they plug in the phones beside the main desk where the staff sit, and recorded maybe about, I think it was actually 32 minutes of a conversation. Now, my ex-girlfriend in Brampton, Ontario, her and her fathers are from India, and they translated what they were saying. You would not believe what they were saying. And I have the recording still. I can forward it to you. You want to play it online if you wish or whatever, but it's quite demeaning to what Newfoundlanders are. They don't think very much of us Newfoundlanders at all. And I swear to you on my life, I am not making this up. This is all...
I'm not sure I'm following. So who's doing the talking here that was recorded?
The people that perhaps work, not perhaps, people that work behind the desks, the people that are allowing people to come in or people to sleep outside. There's 6 particular workers, not 6, there's probably 8 complete workers that work at, like, give me an example, like at 10 St. Clair, that come in there in the evening or in the daytime. And their only job should be to ensure that, these people that are in these homeless shelters are taken care of, meaning that, we know you're going through a tough time. It's difficult, I understand. We're going to help you get back on your feet. That is not their agenda. Their agenda is to ensure that these homeless people stay homeless because they know that, like, people who own the homeless shelters are getting genuinely, on approximation, $250 a day. Now, your listeners are probably going to be shocked and pretty upset about this, but it's a fact, and I'm pretty sure you know this.
Yeah, I know it. I've seen the numbers. But just very quickly on that front, I don't even know if it's for starters, we're the only province in the country that handles emergency shelters the way we do here, and it needn't be the way, and it could be much more cost efficient if it was handled by the public sector, not the private sector. But secondly, it's not really their job to try to ensure someone gets adequate housing and adequate supports. They're just operating a shelter. The onus, from my perspective, falls solely with the government, or against governments.
Well, absolutely, but don't forget that the government has given people like Ashley Ben, I can give you the numbers here if you want them, but I won't bore your listeners, billions of dollars over the last 25 years. Billions, not millions, This has gotten into the ridiculous equations. She's getting over $1.7 million a year, basically, throughout entire Newfoundland of let's help the homeless. My gosh, you have no idea how they are not helping the homeless. There's people who are taking their lives here in St. John's because they just can't take any more. There are people that are just being abused in the homeless system because, they will walk in at, say, 10 o'clock. And these are people who don't even drink. They don't do drugs and nothing like that. But, the particular shelter workers are just assuming that they are on drugs or drinking or whatever it may be. But when we played the recording back to when I recorded them, I put the phone down beside where I was pretending to charge it. I put it there and just recorded their whole conversation. And there's absolutely no respect. And I don't understand how there's not one. And I say I'm the least racist person. You have no idea. Not one racist bone in my body. But when you have a shelter system in Newfoundland that runs, and there's not one Newfoundlander, not one Canadian, not one white person, not one black person working in that system, and you've got people coming over from India, Punjabi with turbans or the dots or whatever it may be, that treat us like you should know better. You should be out there working. You should be out there, and it's demeaning and it's degrading to these poor people who are trying their damnedest to get on their feet, but they're being slapped down every single day. And people that run the shelters, like Ashley, I'm probably never going to be allowed in the shelter.
Yeah, possibly so. But for me, it doesn't matter who you are or where you're from. If you're working in that environment with people who are vulnerable and people who may be at their lowest point of their life, there's a way that we should be dealing with people in an empathetic approach, as opposed to a demeaning, dismissive conversation or comments or whatever the case may be. I'll give you the final thoughts quickly, James, before I go to the news.
Well, one thing I would like to say, my sister works in this industry in Toronto, and I have recorded, I probably shouldn't, it's illegal, whatever you want to call it, but I have put the phone down and recorded the conversations. My sister has listened to that, whether it's in Punjabi or it's in English, it's been translated, and she has listened to it in absolute shock and horror at the way that they look at us Newfoundlanders and think that we are just bottoms of the earth, the scum of the shoe. It's unbelievable and unfathomable that this is happening in Newfoundland, how there cannot be one Canadian, just one Canadian working in a homeless shelter. Not even one Canadian. it's I mean, in Toronto or in Montreal or Vancouver, there's Canadians that work in homeless shelters. Here in St. John's, not one. And that is crazy. So these people come here and they think it's all fun and games. They're getting their $2,600 a month. They're happy. They don't care. They're driving in with their BMWs. They do not care, and I think it's so unfair. Like, I say this to you as a person that's leaving the province within 3 days. I just feel that somebody has to have a voice here, and I want to be that voice, even if I am leaving. I think the public should know that homeless is not something that any human being in St. John's wants to be. There's not one person I've ever spoken to who says, oh, I want to be homeless. It doesn't exist. It never happens.
Okay.
They just want a helping hand.
I understand. James, I'm off to the news, but I appreciate your time.
Okay, brother.
Take care.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much for your time. Take care.
Same reaction I get to homelessness conversations is, again, pretty predictable, is about, we waste money trying to support this or that or what have you. Fact of the matter is, homelessness itself comes with an extraordinary cost. So if you look at all of the social programs, if you look at healthcare, if you look at criminal justice, homelessness, and you don't need me to tell you, or maybe you do, but every ounce of research done in the modern world shows quite clearly across the board, regardless of the country we're talking about, homelessness comes with a huge price tag. It's not only a societal issue or an issue regarding morality or doing what's best for the citizens of the province or the country. The financial issues associated with homelessness are so well understood and documented, and yet we still do a poor job. Like, for starters, the way we deal with the Mercy shelters here and pay private landlords to own and operate Mercy shelters. I mean, remember, it's just last year that there was, for the first time ever, some actual Mercy shelter oversight put in place and a document to say what's expected of these private shelter owner operators. I mean, 2024, first time we actually put that forward, on top of the fact that we should kind of change the way we do that anyway. All right, let's take a break for the news. When we come back, we're speaking with you. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one. Say good morning to the Executive Director at End Homelessness St. John's. That's Doug Pawson. Doug, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you?
Doing okay. How about you?
I'm good. I just thought I'd call in. I mean, I heard the gentleman that James speaking to you earlier, and I just wanted to call in and in part just validate his experiences and talk a bit about the state of the system and sort of where we can find improvements along the way, because I think it's important that everybody is working towards this, and I appreciate how articulate James was in describing his situation, and for the general public thinking of them as the primary audience. So I just wanted to call in, and I wanted to talk a bit about the numbers that he led off with, the 183 people experiencing homelessness. That was from a point-in-time count, which is something that we did in 2022. We recently released the one from 2024 from the fall, and in that one, we estimated at minimum 400 people on a given night in St. John's were experiencing homelessness. So in a 2-year span, we've seen it more than double. And these are real causes for concern, especially in a system that has been, largely patchwork put together without shelter standards. And I think, James kind of talked a little bit about the challenges when you don't have systems operating from a place of equity and support. So I just wanted to just frame that as well, because I think his numbers were off, but he was looking at our old point in time count, and our new one is on our website at weekendedit.com. So I just wanted to validate those experiences and talk to you a bit about some of your thoughts on it as well, Patty.
Sure, and I've seen the report. So if I remember correctly, there was an estimate of maybe 1,400, I think it was, unique individuals that experienced homelessness just in St. John's last year. So that's a pretty massive number. There are a few things that we need to break down maybe a little bit here. So there's a few contributing factors, whether it be issues inside your own home or your life circumstances or employment status or mental health or something, but there's also people that move into the city for access to support. So these might not all be unique cases of people that were living in St. John's and all of a sudden became homeless, because we do know, and we see the stories and hear the stories all the time, is people might flock to urban centres for simple access to support. So there's a few things to break down inside that number.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. And the pit count report does look at the folks who are coming in from other parts of the province. And there's always a significant number of folks who do, come into town to access services and supports, and oftentimes are unable to afford or find a way back to their communities. And so, they're reliant on a system here. And, I think James had mentioned, he was down on his luck and whatnot. And there are lots of contributing factors, like you referenced, like, a relationship breakdown, a household, domestic violence, for example. But a lot of it is folks who are coming out of the child welfare system as well. It's like a super highway into homelessness, we know, and we're not solving the problems at an early enough age for a lot of folks. And the social safety net, of which the shelter system is supposed to be the most empathetic and compassionate to support folks, often is not equipped to do that. And it's been like that for some time. And you referenced, the fact that, we're one of the only provinces, in the country that have a private shelter system. And I think we do have to question the profit motive of operators, especially in the absence of shelter standards. Now, we know shelter standards were released last year in the summer of 2024, but we definitely need to see some movement on that front. And, I can speak to a couple of things. When we took on, the operations at 106 Airport Road, we designed that in part to sort of replicate what a shelter standard protocol would be, providing supports on site, access to healthcare on site, access to housing supports on site. And we were, supporting folks who, in many cases, hadn't had a home and had been relying on shelters for years, and like multiple years at a time. And we know it takes time for folks to become stable, to get back on their feet and find housing. And we've seen some successes in that in the sort of year, just a little bit over a year that we've had folks move in. So we're starting to see that if you apply a set of standards and you apply housing focused principles, you can support folks even if they've been experiencing homelessness, for multiple years at a time. And just, on the pit count side of things, the average respondent of those 330 plus individuals, all of whom have their own experiences and stories, the average respondent said they had been without a home for 550 days. So that's a year and a half. And to try and put that in like a perspective for the general public, like, how often would you, if you went a week with a terrible sleep, like your head would be in a fog, you'd feel, weak, you'd probably not be feeling your best. Imagine not having anything and going a year and a half with not even knowing where you're going to sleep, let alone the quality of your sleep, the quality of your food that you're going to eat. Like, it's almost impossible to get back on your feet if you don't have supports and security and safety built into the system that you're desperately relying on.
This is maybe a bit of a broad and possibly silly question, because it's a busy world and people have plenty of their own concerns, whether it be with relationships with their family and or their general public and their job and job security and whatever the case may be. So the big broad question would be, why should people care? Because people come at me all the time saying that they just don't care. They've got their own problems. They've got their own concerns. People need to, pull themselves up with their own accord and their own efforts, when that's easier said than done. So I'll just ask the question as simply as, why should people care?
Well, we know people care when in times of emergencies. Like, we've seen this play out in our province, in our communities this summer with the wildfires. We know people care. They rally. They work together to solve big problems in times of need. And that was a very much an acute crisis. Wildfires, displaced communities, people rallying to support their neighbors. When it comes to things like, housing and homelessness, you're right. People are busy. They're struggling. Everybody's trying to make ends meet. And, it's tough to feel empathetic towards somebody when you're trying to just make sure you have food on your own for your own family. So for me, I would say we know people care intrinsically when there's an acute emergency. What we need to think of is homelessness as a chronic emergency. This has been going on for years and years, and it's easy to lose faith that we can make a dent in it when the political will just doesn't ever seem to be there. And we have to call that out for what it is. We know that folks are struggling. We know that the social safety net has been eroded over years and years. And the people with the decision-making authority to make a dent in this, they put patchwork solutions together, which is for us one of the reasons why I've talked to you. Like, we need a comprehensive provincial housing and homelessness strategy, not patchwork announcements here and there. We need comprehensive plans, because you're not going to get any solutions if you don't have plans and you're reacting. So we need these plans. We need to see them in place. We need to see the investments. I think that will go a long way in showing people that they should care, because, I have said this, the most expensive responses are emergency responses, whether it's a shelter, an emergency room, or a hospital bed, or, a corrections in a jail cell. Like, we don't want those, because those aren't good outcomes for people, but they're the most expensive and the only things that we respond to as a community and as a government. We don't want that. So when you invest in people, when you invest in the communities, and you create good, sound social policy that invests in people for the long term, you're going to see better outcomes. And if everybody cares about having healthy food, healthy communities, access to safe and affordable housing, we should all care. It benefits everybody. Good social policy is good economic policy, and we've got to be able to crack our political decision makers for them to understand why it's so critical to do this. Because as somebody, for me and our teams and our community of partners who are on the front lines every day seeing the impacts of an eroded social safety net, our organization is called End Homelessness St. John's, and Patty, sometimes I feel at best we're just managing the situation. We're just managing the homeless crisis, and it's a tough feeling to think that way, but we can do it. People need to care, because everybody benefits when communities and people are invested in.
Yeah, and I mean, this is always feels cold and callous when I say it, but we are talking about human beings, number one. So I'll say that to begin this comment. But if you're worried about how your tax dollars are spent, then you should be worried about this. Why? Because the amount of money that we spend on homelessness supports and housing and what have you, the way we spend it is just deeply flawed. The fact of the matter is, and you don't take my word for it, homelessness comes with a cost. If we do better on trying to get people appropriate, adequate housing with the required supports, we actually save money. Like, people tell me all the time, I'm sick of spending money on the same old thing where people don't even want any help. They don't want to get better. It's just not true. I'll give this one example, then I'll give you the floor. And I give this one all the time because I think it's meaningful when we talk about money. In Toronto, at the University Hospital, they looked at 1,000 admissions. Half were chronically unhoused, the other half were housed. The folks who were chronically unhoused, the homeless, spent twice as long in the hospital, consequently cost twice as much. It's the most expensive thing in the country, is their night in the hospital. Then you look at some of the criminal justice-related matters. People who have mental illnesses that have led to some sort of criminal activity and or homelessness interaction with the criminal justice system, the numbers are the same right across the country. So between the most expensive thing, a hospital bed, second most expensive thing, a night in the penitentiary, man, oh man, if you can just absorb those numbers and understand that we can do better and save money. So I hate to make it about money, but some people do make it about money. There's ways to do better. We will be far better off with your tax dollar that you're concerned about, and I'm concerned with my tax dollar, and I don't like how we spend it on this front because it's Band-Aid after Band-Aid, patchwork after patchwork. Nothing gets better.
Patty, you're absolutely right, and I'll just sort of close off by saying, in the PIC count, everybody that was surveyed, every single person, because again, I talk in numbers a lot, but every single person with their own stories and experiences that have led them to experience homelessness on average of 550 days, they all want to find housing. Every single person wanted to find housing. So people do want housing, and they can't find it. They can't find it and maintain it without supports. And we're, like you said, investing in patchwork solutions, and it's costing us all. And most importantly, it's costing the most vulnerable in our communities their health and well-being.
Appreciate the time, Doug. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Patty.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, let's get to the break. We'll be back. Kim's in the queue to talk about the Tony Humby case, and then we're speaking with you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Kim. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty.
Hi.
Not a regular caller, but a regular listener. And I've been looking at. I have so many thoughts on this Humvee case, and it's just. I hope I can be articulate in explaining my thoughts on all of this. When I look at the discussion this morning, we're talking about the Humvee case. We're also talking about homelessness, and I don't know when the government or the justice system or the powers that be don't see or are blind to the connection between situations, that core question, why? People who are homeless, they could be drug addicts. They could all, as we know, have their own situation. We look at the Humvee case, and I was reading that, some of these kids, the most vulnerable, in shelters, being abused by a pedophile. These kids are stuck in a system that is harming them and is not protecting them. And make no wonder they don't want to come forward when you see someone like this guy Humvee, and the horrible, horrible things that he's done. And he's probably going to get off on a number of these cases on a technicality. And then what does that do for kids who are being abused now? They're looking at it and going, why would I go through all of that? Nobody is protecting me. If I'm in a shelter or whatever, I'm being beat down. I'm stuck in the system. He was giving them money and they were buying drugs and, in a shelter. They age out of these shelters and they're beat out. And by then they're addicted to drugs. They can't get a job. They're going to end up on the street. There's that connection between the justice system, mental health, and, trying to find homes for homeless people. Like, someone needs to go back to this Band-Aid solution about putting mini homes up in, Buckmaster Circle or what, all of these different things. Someone needs to go back to the core and why all of this is happening. This is happening, why are there drug addicts? There's probably drug addicts, one, because, they were just maybe tried something and became immediately addicted. But so many people have mental health issues, and that's where things need to start. Taking this money and putting Band-Aids, like you said, on situations, it just snowballs. Mental health spirals to, drug addiction, spirals to them not getting a job, spirals to homelessness. And, I have to ask, is anyone blind to this?
No, I don't think so. Just a quick question, Kim. You say that, and I can't prejudge what might happen in the Humvee case, but you said that it's likely he gets off based on technicalities. What do you mean by that? Are you talking about the yet to be fully heard Jordan ruling, or what have you?
Yes, I think that's really, what I'm thinking of, Patty, is that, everybody has, and I don't fully understand it all, but I think that's what that refers to, is that they have to be tried within a certain period of time. Is that the case, Patty?
Yeah, that's what is the Jordan ruling, is Supreme Court ruling.
Right.
It says that after being charged, your case needs to be heard within 18 months if we're talking about provincial court, 30 months if we're talking about superior court.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess that's what I mean when I'm referring to a technicality. It's that some of these charges could be thrown out because the system is not getting to it fast enough and they're not dealing with it. So it's make no wonder it, took long for people to come forward and talk about this and finally divulge what happened to them. And I think it's just everything kind of just snowballs, and there's such a systemic connection between all of these. Like, I am right? I mean, would you what's your opinion on that?
Well, I mean, it's a difficult question because not every individual circumstance can be the same or have the same type of links, but I get where you're coming from. You know, inherently, there will be plenty of those connections, and that might speak to a bunch of people who find themselves in the life predicament of being homeless or addicted to one thing or another. So I won't dispute what you're saying, but I think there's lots of different reasons as to how people, I mean, I'm not even including mental health there because that's not a socioeconomic thing. That's not a gender thing. That is a very much a standalone circumstance that I'm loath to wrap them all into the same conversation. But in the world of simply addiction and homelessness, yeah, the connections you make are probably absolutely true for many people who find themselves in that predicament.
Yeah, and I think it was when I have been, listening to the news and, reading VOCM and you're looking at the headlines and there's, homelessness is, such a big monster of an issue, and then throw in something as high profile as that Humvee case. And I couldn't help but go back and just kind of connect different things in my own thoughts and say, these kids are stuck in a system that aren't protecting them and aren't helping them. And that's why it's probably, taken so long for them to come forward. But I don't know. I guess maybe I hope I was articulate in trying to connect it all. But that was the connection that I saw, and I do understand there are so many different reasons why people are homeless. And I know it's not all mental health and so on. But, I mean, just witnessing what you witness down around Military Road and all the poor people that you see by the gathering place, and be it drugs or mental health or whatever their circumstance.
Yeah.
It just, it's coming from all directions, and you almost need to look at it somehow as a holistic approach. I don't know, Patty. It's just such a devastating situation all the way around for our society.
Yeah. Just, insofar as people coming forward, like in the Humvee case, there could be a variety of reasons. Maybe one might be shame, might be a fear you won't be believed, and then how you might get treated in the court system. So there's a bunch of reasons why people do not come forward in circumstances like that. Kim, I appreciate the time. I'm off to the news, but thanks for calling.
Yes, absolutely, Patty. Thank you for listening.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right.
Take care. Bye-bye.
There we go. Let's take a break for the news. When we come back, we're going to discuss the recent announcement regarding subsidized travel for people in Labrador, Great Northern Peninsula, some of the details associated with, and also the caller's concern that there's a lack of media coverage, even though I know we covered it here at VOCM, but we'll see what we're going to hear from Leila Evans, the MHA, the PC MHA for Torngat Mountains, right after this. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Say good morning to the PC member for the Torngat Mountains. That's Leila Evans. Leila, you're on the air.
Yes, thank you, Patty.
No problem.
Patty, I'm calling in because I'm really disappointed about the media coverage. Maybe through no fault of their own, but I've done interviews where I've stated about this subsidy. And people on the island portion listening to all the details. I know some of them can't help but feel resentful because it makes it sound like there's a huge government subsidy that's going into lowering the cost of travel in Labrador, and the facts are not being talked about. And the biggest fact is, and this is where it's misleading, is that a person can only avail of this subsidy for 2 trips a year. 2 trips a year. So it's not like when you need to travel or things come up. Also, you have to apply to Labrador Affairs online 28 days in advance. And then when you're finally approved, you're given a code, and then you got to go back to the airline and try and book your ticket. So, Patty, for me, in addition to that, in my district, there's going to be very few of those subsidized seats available throughout the week for traveling because you're only allowed 2 trips a year. I want Newfoundlanders and Labradorians to know that. Only 2 trips. So this is not going to be a large subsidizing of the travel, making travel available for people. Then the 175 tickets that's available per week is going to be given out based on the population size. So my communities are smaller communities. So the availability of those tickets are going to be less. And then when you look at the availability of travel and having to book in advance is really going to create a lot of problems. So to me, Patty, what really bothers me is it's misleading the people, including Labradorians. And there was a very controlled announcement where you couldn't really get all the information. So I think what's happening is they're hoping to sell this to Labradorians as a solution. And then when people start to try and travel and they run into all these barriers and the facts come out, the election is going to be over. And I want to say I'm really worried. The second thing I'm really worried about is political interference, political influence, because you have the plight to Labrador affairs. And there's lack of transparency. So who's to say that certain people who are trying to book will be given preferential treatment in having their file processed quickly and get that code so they can go back and book ahead of other people. Really, there's a lack of transparency. And why do you have to apply to Labrador Affairs? It's like almost like a make-work project for Labrador Affairs. You're probably going to have to hire more people. And why should Labrador Affairs be in the business of deciding who can travel, and have you got your second ticket? Is this a third return ticket? You know, so for me, it's really important for people in Newfoundland and Labrador to understand that this is complicated. It's a lot of barriers, and really people who need to travel, especially in the rural parts of Labrador, are not going to be able to avail of this. And it's very frustrating for me, Patty. I'm very angry, actually. I'm very angry at the political interference and the influence and just using Labrador Affairs now to process. And it reminds me of Joey Smallwood. Back when Newfoundland and Labrador joined Confederation, and then all of a sudden you had the family allowance and the widower's pension, and you had this money coming out to families who really badly needed this money. And what did they do? Basically, they thought that Joey Smallwood was sending them the check. And to me, this is another situation, Patty, and it doesn't deal with the monopoly of Provincial Airlines and Air Borealis. And the facts that came out not very long ago, the study done by the Airport Authority in Goose Bay found that over the last 5 years, the price of tickets out of Lab West, out of Wabush, went up 47%. The price of the ticket went up 47% under this monopoly airline, 33% out of Goose Bay. And looking at the national average for airline increases, 9.2.
Right.
47% out of Wabush.
Yeah, and I've seen the numbers, and I've talked about the numbers here in the program. Just a question about process. So if it's a government subsidy, which it is either one of two things. Either PAL goes through the government for the approval or the refund or the subsidy, or the traveller does. So how could it be handled other than going through the government for a government subsidy?
Well, the thing about it, Patty, is if it was going to be a discounted ticket, why didn't you just agree to have, when you want to travel, this is the discount that's going to be applied? Why do you have to apply to Labrador Affairs when you put on that extra flight for the so-called tourists on the island? They didn't have to apply to a government department 21 days in advance, and they didn't have, you know what I mean? Like, so you didn't have these restrictions. And another thing too, now the minister, Lisa Dempster, is taking it back. She's, to counter all the concern from residents. They're saying, 21 days is the maximum. So what does that mean? Who's going to process it? And the thing about it is, I'm really concerned about political interference and influencing.
Yeah, I guess the difference would be is because there's a cap. So I suppose the process.
Two flights.
Yeah, and 175 tickets.
On the island. Yeah. I don't want people on the island to say, oh, look at Labradorians now, they're going to be subsidized. They can travel whenever they want. It's going to be subsidized down to almost 50% less a ticket. It's only twice a year, Paddy. Like, really, honestly, like, that's not going to, and then you're probably not going to get the seats that you need to travel. You know what I mean? And you know, like, especially like in Northern Labrador. So to me is, I don't like the way they sold it. They sell it like it was a solution for, you know, like high travel cost. But for me, Paddy, it's only 2 trips a year. And you got to apply to Labrador Affairs 21 days in advance, and then you got to go back with your code to the airline. And even between the island and Labrador, a lot of times the flights are all sold out. You can't travel on the day. In Northern Labrador with the monopoly Air Borealis, you can't fly within the week. So for me, Paddy, is people need to be able to travel when they want to travel or when they have to travel. But more importantly, this is not a subsidized a program where people can travel as much as they want, whenever they need to. This is 2 trips a year. You got to book in advance, and most of the people are not going to be able to travel on the dates they need to. For emergencies, like somebody up in the home, you know, you got a loved one in the home, you need to travel up because you're ailing or something like that, or you need to actually travel for your business. That's not included. You need to travel for medical. That's not included. And Patty, I'm not ungrateful for this little small, you know, like availability for the people. I appreciate it, and it does help a little bit. But what really, really bothers me is this is being sold as a solution, and also I don't like the way they rolled out the press release about this. And when they did their announcements, it was very, very controlled. It was limited. People didn't have time to go. People didn't have time to participate. Basically, I was prevented from me actually being able to attend because I was invited in the morning for the Wildbush announcement for the next morning. And it was physically impossible to get there to ask questions. And I was told that a lot of the media ran into the same problems. So for me, this is another election ploy. They're trying to make it sound very, very good, so the people in Labrador will actually vote them back in, only to find out that they're very restricted on availability, times they can travel, and only 2 trips a year. And it's
Understood.
not solving the high cost of travel. And Patty, I want to point out, I was very disappointed that the 2 trips limit was not carried by the news. I was interviewed by CBC. I repeatedly said to the people of the province when I was being interviewed, this is just for 2 trips. It's not unlimited travel.
Okay.
And listening to VOCM News over the weekend, the long weekend, they kept talking about the benefits, but they never talked about the restrictions, especially that it was only 2 tickets. And that's not solving the people's problems, Patty.
Understood, Leila. I appreciate the time and the concern. I'll add that cap to the commentary into the future, for sure.
Yeah, I'm very, very upset with that, Patty. It's misleading.
I appreciate your time, Leila. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, let's get our final break of the morning. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Tolson. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Paddy. How are you this morning,
Best kind. How about you?
Oh, hanging in there, boy. Like I said, it's a pretty nice day today, but Paddy, I'd be remiss if I didn't throw out a bouquet to all the people involved in that. I don't know if I should say, like Tracy Shute said now, Kingston Wildfire was nothing but a monster. I mean, Paddy, I've even walked back in that country from Heart's Content years ago from what I call in Larry's here, and right up over the hills and right on down, far down, that would be far enough down you can see the house on the other side of the shore. Myself and Dr. Ken Burries, now he's a doctor in town there, ear, nose and throat. We used to go down there to what we call the Western Bay Pond, the Camp Pond, and trouting. But Paddy, this devastation has taken a toll on the whole area and I guess perhaps the whole world.
No doubt. I've seen, so now that people are getting back into the areas that have been devastated with the fire, the pictures are heartbreaking.
Yeah. Well, I can remember, Paddy, like I told you, I phoned you before when this fire started down there on May 7th, and I explained to you what I saw when I was coming up from Western Bay with a load of hay on from my buddies.
there that day was devastating. But according to what I'm told since that, I have never been over there since it happened. I have a daughter who lives in Adams Cove, and she actually never lost her house, thank God, in the first one, and she built a new one since May 7 out on the main road, and that one escaped, and then her trailer as well. But like I told her, it was a miracle with someone looking over her. But I just like to say I'm a sad to the heart with everything that's been going on with it. But as for the volunteers, and the volunteers, Paddy, directly and indirectly, that was involved in this, I can't say it thank you enough.
And I'm with you. And we know that there's some, 35 different volunteer fire departments were involved. I think that was the number that I recall reading. I'd like to know, when the government says that they're going to offer some compensation to those who are volunteering to fight the fires, I'd like to know what the result of that was and when that's going to happen, because that just makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, whether, Paddy, is going to be a financial donation to them or their departments, or, is there such a thing out there as we're going to, give you so much for being a volunteer firefighter a year, or a big tax break, or what is it going to be?
What is it? It's a good question, and I suppose we'll find out sooner than later. I'll zip off an email to see if I can't get some information here this morning. Anything else you want to say while we have you, Tulsa?
Yes, I do, Paddy.
Okay.
Again, I'm going back to what I say about volunteers, and as we all know, there's a provincial election on the horizon, and there's also the municipal one that's set in stone already, and that's part of the reason why also I'm calling you, is that a lot of little communities in our district, it takes in from Carbonear, Trinity, Bay de Verde. Right now, it takes in from Whiteway down to Bay de Verde, and Bay de Verde up to Bristol's Hope. The old district, when I ran as an NDP candidate, was from Hope Hall down to Bay de Verde and then up Salmon Cove. So it's been changed since 2014. So the guy that called you this morning, this guy Greg, I think it was.
Okay.
He was looking for Steve Crocker, but that wouldn't be his district at all. Sherry Gamble Walsh would be the one he would be looking for.
Yeah, I think he was calling from inside Crocker's voting district, as far as I could tell anyway. But anyway, whoever the member is, when government has as many people working for them as they do, when tax-paying public or the citizens of the province have questions and concerns and they're in a bad spot, I think we just owe them some response. Even if you don't like the answer you get, an answer is better than silence.
Well, Paddy, that's what I always said, and I'm bringing up the reason why, but councils. Same thing. I've been on this town council of Hartsconnect since 2001. If you haven't got a response that they want, let them know something. Give them an idea and tell them you'll get back to them. Don't drag them out the door and tell them, no, boy, I'll let you know in a month's time.
Yeah.
No, that's no good. You got to let them know something.
Sure you do.
Something sometimes is better than nothing.
You got that right, Tulsa. I appreciate the time. I'm going to sneak out one more.
One more thing. Like
Quickly.
I say, with Election Day coming up soon, and nomination days are starting tomorrow in some districts in this whole of our area. And I just advise people, and like for people, if they're going to show their support and want to run the election, to get out and be a part of your community. The only way you can be a good citizen in the community, as far as I'm concerned, is participate and be a volunteer.
Fair ball. Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Take care, Paddy. And
You too,
again, your
buddy.
offer is there on the table anytime you want. Come on.
Thanks, Tulsa. I appreciate that.
Take care. Stay safe.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Final word goes to line number 5 in the Mayor of New West Valley. That's Mike Tiller. Mayor Tiller, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you?
Best kind. How about you?
Not too bad, Paddy. I just want to bring attention to a fundraiser that we're having September the 6th. That's this Saturday night at the Beathic Arena. It's for the CBN Wildfire Fund that the provincial government and the federal government are going to match dollar for dollar. We have some great local talent lined up. It's going to start at 7:30. We have fire departments from Centerville, Wareham, Trinity, Greenspan, ourselves, Lumsden, and Musgrave Harbour that are going to be in attendance. We are the 5 departments that collaborated when Musgrave Harbour had their evacuation, and we know what it's like to have that kind of pressure put on them. Ourselves and Musgrave Harbour also sent a crew up to CBN and saw firsthand the devastation up there. So we figured, let's all get together, get some local talent. We're going to have a cash bar. There's going to be there's at least a couple homemade quilts that are going up on tickets. There's going to be a 50-50 draw, and we want to see as many people from the region as we can come out and support this worthy cause.
Sounds great to me. You've had the final word. Good luck with it, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. We'll talk to you.
Take care. Talk soon. Bye-bye. Here he goes. New West Valley Mayor Mike Tiller. All right, good show today. Big thanks to all hands who support the program. And yes, we will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.